On this episode of Nerd Rushmore, we're going to talk about the potential ways that the X-Men and the Fantastic Four could enter the MCU. Stay tuned as we break it down. So earlier today, Disney announced that they have bought 21st Century Fox, and what that means is now the X-Men and Fantastic Four could potentially be used in future MCU movies. People have been speculating about this all the time. What would happen if this actually happened? And now that it's actually happened, it's time to break down what I think are some of the best possibilities, the top 4 possibilities of how the X-Men and the Fantastic Four could enter the MCU. Remember, these are just predictions, these are just theories, there's not really any spoilers in here, even though if my idea is right, I'm definitely going to take credit for it. But again, no spoilers, these are just predictions, so let's get started. So the first idea that I've been seeing thrown around in multiple different ways, so I'm not going to really talk about specific, is multiverse theory. I think that this could actually be a good way to introduce the X-Men into the MCU. With the Fantastic Four, I honestly don't see that there are a lot of hurdles that you have to jump over to enter them into the MCU. They are all human, they get their powers in multiple different ways in the comics that we see. It would be very easy to be like, oh, okay, they have a new origin story, and now that origin story is part of the MCU. So it wouldn't be difficult for you to incorporate the Fantastic Four into the MCU, although all these theories, they could obviously play a part in. The X-Men are a little different because the X-Men are mutants, and basically they're humans who are genetically more advanced and have been evolving over a period of time. It's very difficult because some of these characters have very long backstories having spanned decades. So you can't just be like, poof, now they're there. You can't just do that without having a very good explanation of why they're there. Here, with the multiverse theory, is one way you could just be like, poof, now they're there. So multiverse theory is basically saying that there are multiple Earths, multiple realities, infinite realities basically existing in every single way, shape, or form. There are multiple events within the Marvel comics that deal with multiverse theory. Secret Wars is one of the big ones where Earths are colliding. You have huge conflicts between all of the Marvel characters. So you could adapt one of those stories and basically be like, hey, now that we have introduced the multiverse, which we have introduced the multiverse in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's talked about at the end of Doctor Strange by Wong, how he talks about how the Ancient One's death is going to be heard all through the multiverse. So that could be one of the things that you tie into this. But basically saying that in another Earth, the X-Men exist and maybe the Avengers don't exist on that world. The X-Men exist and they are the people responsible for that world. And some event causes them to either come to our Earth or causes the Avengers to go to their Earth. Most likely it would be the X-Men coming to the MCU Earth, and somehow that becoming a conflict, which leads into one of the big stories I think that a lot of people want to see, which is the X-Men versus Avengers. My thing about this is that people want to see this. I don't think that storyline is going to happen very fast. I think that they are going to slow play this just like they did with Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, because I think that they're going to want to do with the X-Men. They were going to want their own X-Men in the MCU. So that's theory number 1. Let me know what you think about multiverse theory. There are tons of ways that could go. I'm not going to go into details, specifics, because I've heard a lot of different theories about just that idea. Basically, the general theory is the X-Men are on another world. They somehow make it to our world via a portal, via one of these cosmic beings that can rip time and space apart, and that's how they come to be. The second theory involves current things that are going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's being what happens with the Infinity Stones. So right now, if you don't know, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, since the end of Avengers, they have been building a plot for the Infinity War. Infinity War is a story about Thanos collecting all the Infinity Stones, putting them in what is called the Infinity Gauntlet, and becoming an all-powerful being that can basically destroy everything. So that's the story right now. So obviously with these superhero stories, we end up with usually, obviously, the good guys win. So let's assume, for sake of this, at the end of Avengers 4, the good guys have won. Thanos doesn't have the Infinity Gauntlet anymore. The Infinity Stones are either scattered or put in a safe place or destroyed, one of those things. So the theory here, or the prediction here, is that that event could literally warp the reality of what is happening in the current MCU. So basically, either these stones being destroyed or these stones being combined to use together warps the reality of the MCU in a way that now we have mutants now. I am not a fan of this theory because I'm not a fan of the idea of you being like, poof, now X-Men exist. And one of the reasons why I don't like that is because we've talked about a lot in the X-Men past is that this is an evolution thing. This is just the next level of evolution, is mutants coming from humans. That's just the next level. Evolution takes thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So just being like poof, that happens. Yes, in reality, a gauntlet, the Infinity Gauntlet, could make that happen, but I just kind of feel like that's lazy writing. One of the other big things that I don't like about this theory is I think that it's actually kind of minuscule based on what the Infinity Stones can actually do. Unless this is changing a lot of things throughout the MCU, like a hard reboot, the Infinity Stones simply just creating a new form of human on Earth, like that's not even the maximum potential of what this catastrophic event should do to warp the MCU. It's like now we have mutants, like you would have to add a bunch of other things in there, which would just be very difficult to tell in the limited amount of story time that you actually do have in the MCU. I know it seems like a lot now, but it's actually fairly limited when you think about it, especially with an event like Infinity War happening. Like something major has to happen at the end of that, and I don't think that, okay, now we have mutants is a major enough event. So let me know what you think about that particular story. I think that it could possibly work. That might be the direction that they're going. I just personally don't like it. I'm not a fan, so let me know what you think. So the last two ideas that I want to talk about, one which is not mine, one I have to give credit over to one of really great comic YouTubers over on YouTube, Comics Explained. I heard him talking in their podcast with Comic Story about this, breaking down their different ideas, and he was explaining this idea, and I really like this idea, and I didn't necessarily steal this idea from my idea, but I kind of adapted and added to it, including some other different stories in a way that I like, which include more of the MCU stuff. But his idea, which I really did, like I said, I enjoy. What happened and what has been happening over this period of time is that Professor X has actually been hiding mutants from the humans on Earth. The reason why I think that this is a great idea is because, one, we have seen now within the X-Men universe that Professor X actually has a lot of power to manipulate minds on a global scale. You have two events that I'm talking about. One with Cerebro, and I believe it's the first X-Men. There is an event where basically he's in Cerebro and he could, if he wanted to, literally use his mind to kill either every mutant on Earth or every human on Earth, which means that he has the capacity with that machine to reach out to people and manipulate their minds on a global scale. You add that along with the fact that he's also been and had the ability to create mental blocks in someone like Jean Grey to keep her power dormant, her Dark Phoenix power dormant. If you add those together, Jean Grey's mind is very powerful. She's a level 5 mutant. For the fact that Professor X is a level 4 mutant, has been able to do that for so long, has been able to block her mind from her Dark Phoenix powers, means for me that if he could simply do that to humans on a global scale with very much ease. It would just be like, oh, these events that happened, you don't remember them. He's not blocking a power. He's not blocking one of the strongest forces in the literal universe. He's just basically wiping the memories of mutants from the existence of humans. So any catastrophic event, they don't know. I think that's something that he could very easily do. Then you mix the events of Infinity War and with the event of Vision getting the mind gem ripped out of his head. Basically, the idea that Comics Explained has was that, I believe his name is Rob. So Rob at Comics Explained, the idea that he has is that when the mind gem is ripped out of Vision's head, it basically has this ripple effect, and all of a sudden humans remember what mutants are. I think that that is actually a good adaptation that brings in current MCU stuff with an explanation of how it happened. It fills in a lot of the holes that I think are there, and so I'm really excited about this theory. Like when I heard it, that was something that's kind of cool. I think that there'd be a really cool adaptation. So let me know what your thoughts about this. I would love to hear what you have to say. If you want to hear about the whole theory, or you want to see the video that I'm talking about with Comics Explained and Comic Historian, I'm going to leave that link down in the bio. If you ever want any information just about individual comics, these guys are great. I've learned so much about different comics from these guys, so definitely check out their channels. So the last theory that I want to talk about is my personal theory, which I thought of after hearing Comics Explained theory, but I kind of added my own little twist into it because I wanted to incorporate more of what was actually going on in the current MCU in the movies into the theory. So I'm gonna break this down for you. So my theory has to do with one of my favorite Marvel comics and is the big central part of it, and that's the Marvel Illuminati. So they've teased in trailers, and everybody's talked about is this new Marvel Illuminati. They've been teasing this in trailers recently, and that would be the new Marvel Illuminati being Iron Man, Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, Doctor Strange, and Wong. So that's kind of the new Marvel MCU Illuminati. Now that they have the rights back to all those characters, they could do a complete and total Illuminati. So if you've heard about the Illuminati in real life, the Illuminati is this secret organization of rich and wealthy, powerful people who are basically making all of the decisions for everything that happens in the world. They're responsible for everything. They're a secret society, and they just do everything. That's what they are. So the Marvel Universe has this version of that when it comes to superheroes. You have the smartest and the brightest and sometimes the strongest heroes in the Marvel Universe coming together to make decisions that they feel like even the X-Men can individually handle on their own, or the Avengers can't handle on their own, or they think that they need to keep these events secret and keep them from happening. So they come together and they make decisions. So the original Illuminati team is Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Professor X, Reed Richards, Namor, and Black Bolt. You also, in some of the stories, have Black Panther and Captain America, other characters in there, but that's the original actual team. So a couple of those characters aren't in the MCU, and I don't think they'll get introduced in the MCU for quite a while, especially now that the X-Men are here. But this main idea, the main story, is the thing that has crafted my idea. And my idea now is this: what if that version was the new Illuminati, and there was actually an Illuminati before this? So my idea is this. Okay, so somewhere in the 80s, what ends up happening is Professor X and the X-Men have some kind of cataclysmic event. We could call it apocalypse. Apocalypse happened in the 80s, so that is when this catastrophic event happens. So because of this, what ends up happening is that the Ancient One, who obviously is alive at this point. We don't see him, but obviously this person is alive because this person has been alive for 100 years. The Ancient One finds Professor X, who's been trying to hide mutants from all the world, finds Professor X, and she's like, look, I know what you guys are doing. I know who you are. This is something that's obviously a capability that I feel like the Ancient One would be able to have in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She's powerful enough, she can bend reality, she can see all these things. For her to be able to keep her mind clear from being affected by Professor X, or even know that her mind is being affected by Professor X, could be something that happens. So the Ancient One finds Professor X. Because of everything that's happening, the Ancient One and Professor X go through a series of conversations, and they are trying to figure out what is the next step to do with the mutant quote-unquote threat, because it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's gonna happen. There's going to be more and more events, so how do we respond? So because of this, Professor X and the Ancient One are like, okay, we maybe need to bring more people in to make this decision, because this affects humans too. It doesn't affect just our sorcerers, it doesn't affect just the mutants, it brings other humans into the fold. So they decide that they're gonna bring some other humans into the fold. So other humans that they decide to bring in the fold, other powerful beings, other powerful people from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, so we know that a Black Panther does exist. So we bring in King T'Chaka. Wakanda is still the wealthiest nation in the world. They still have a right reign. So King T'Chaka is one of them. Hank Pym. We already know that Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man, has created his Ant-Man suit at this point. It's no stretch that he could have invented this during the 80s, and the Ancient One and or Professor X could know about this. You maybe bring in a Howard Stark as well. Obviously, he's done a lot of things when it comes to weapons and things throughout the ages. The arc reactor has been created at this point, so they see this potential of this person being able to create maybe more and more things and seeing what his influence on the world is, so they bring him in as well. You round that out at this point, maybe bringing a Magneto type character or another X-Men type character into the fold, but that's the team. You have the Ancient One, Professor X, Howard Stark, Hank Pym, and T'Chaka. And they basically come together as a unit and they are having a political discussion about what to do with mutants. Basically what they just end up deciding is that the Ancient One and Professor X should keep hiding the X-Men from the world. Okay, they have the power to do that. Obviously, the Ancient One can do a lot to alter reality if she uses the power of Dormammu as well. There's a lot that she can do. She's kept herself alive for so much longer. And you add that with Professor X's ability to manipulate people's minds. They come together and they do something that basically puts a quote-unquote kind of spell over the world, so mutants are just basically erased from memory. So this takes us to the current timeline. So recently in the current timeline, in Doctor Strange, the Ancient One has died. This is a fairly recent event when it comes to the continuity of the MCU. So my thing is this, the Ancient One dies. Because the Ancient One has died, spell has broken, and they've kind of hinted a little bit at this at the end of Doctor Strange. Wong says that the Ancient One's death will be heard throughout the multiverse. So basically saying that the Ancient One, her death is cataclysmic to everything that's going on in reality, and this is one of those things. Okay, Professor X tries to do his best to keep this spell, keep this happening, but he can't. He does not have the power to do it simply on his own. So over the next couple years, you start having these X-Men events, these mutant events happening where people are actually seeing this. So these relatively small events, they don't have to be huge, nothing along the Apocalypse scale, nothing along any of the Avengers 1, 2, or Infinity War scale, but these small events maybe with individual X-Men teams that are happening there. You could do this in a multiple ways. You could have a Deadpool event, like that could be one of the events. You could have something along the lines of something having to do with Magneto. You could have something along the lines of something to do with Cyclops or things like that. These small events, which were kind of the creation of the X-Men in the first place, you go about having that creation of a new kind of X-Men team, but you then also take those and incorporate it into, now you have people like Iron Man, you have people like Captain America, all Nick Fury's SHIELD. They are realizing and seeing what is happening and that this mutant threat is imminent. So because Professor X cannot hide this from the world, he obviously knows about the Sorcerer Supreme. He knows that there should be a new Sorcerer Supreme, so he seeks out Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has said already that he has been monitoring alien threats. He's been monitoring threats to the universe. So maybe he at this point knows and has seen and starts seeing these mutant threats, so he's aware of Professor X. So somehow they come together and they decide that they need to start doing something about the mutant threat. So they try to do the old plan. They try to reestablish the barrier, reestablish the spell on the world. They realize that Doctor Strange, even though he is powerful, he is not powerful enough, especially without the power of Dormammu, to make this happen, to keep this bubble there. So they have to come up with a new plan. And their new plan is basically they want to form a new Illuminati, since most of the Illuminati, former Illuminati, are now dead, a new Illuminati to figure out what to do with this threat. So they form a new Illuminati. The new Illuminati would be Doctor Strange, Professor X, Iron Man, Reed Richards, T'Challa, Captain America, and Captain Marvel. So that would be the new Illuminati. So then you could have a movie where all of this is explained in one movie. We're talking about the Illuminati, Marvel Illuminati, this one movie. And this new team comes together and has to figure out how they're going to deal with the new mutant threat. What is going to happen to mutants? What are we going to do? How are we going to start incorporating the mutants into the world? And that starts setting up the political conflict leading us into, down the line, an X-Men versus Avengers movie, which would be awesome. So that is my theory. It's one I thought out for quite a while. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think. I think that this does a lot of things because it plugs up a lot of holes. One of the reasons I like my theory, and one of the reasons I like Theories Over Comics Explained, is because it plugs up a lot of holes about just putting a lot of the big characters from the X-Men into the MCU. Characters like Professor X, characters like Magneto, characters like Storm, characters like Jean Grey even, have these backstories that span back decades. So you can't just really be like, pop, now they exist. They have to have history. There are tied in things when it comes to Captain America and Wolverine within Marvel canon. There's things that you could tie in when it comes to World War II with Captain America, what he was doing in World War II, and Magneto as a child in World War II, and how Captain America's team was basically breaking into these camps and liberating these people. You could have that happen, that be Captain America liberated one of the camps that Magneto's family was in. Like, there's ways to tie this in, and some of these characters are old. Magneto and Professor X and Logan specifically are old, so they need to have their backstories be there. Like, Logan is hundreds of years old, actually. He's fought in World War I, II, he's fought in the Civil War even. So you can't just eliminate their backstory. You can't do that. So this would be a way for you to still have their backstory, but put them into the MCU in a way that's absolutely believable. You take two of the strongest characters in the MCU, being the Ancient One and Professor X, and have them do something on a basically cosmic level, which is something that they both are capable of, because the Ancient One is kind of a cosmic being. So let me know your thoughts about this. Let me know what you think. I would love to talk about this. I would love for you to poke holes in this so I can try to further along my theory. I would love to hear what you guys think about the other theories. So like always, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell so you get new notifications about what is going on. It is Star Wars Day. The Last Jedi comes out. I'll be doing my review for that, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you don't miss that. I'm super excited about that. So like I said, my name is Oscar Hampton. This has been a special episode of Nerd Rushmore. Later days.